Title 17 U.S. Code 512F provides penalties for the deliberate misrepresentation of copyright infringement. The owners and authors of this video, the common denominator, and the Paramystic Broadcast Channel are a nonprofit 501c3 exempt organization and believes in good faith that it constitutes educational fair use, as per Title 17 U.S.C. 107. Persons, agencies, attorneys, and or social media algorithms filing a false or frivolous Digital Millennium Copyright Act complaint may be subject to civil liability. Warning: the following content may contain elements that are not suitable for some audiences. Accordingly, viewer discretion is advised.
Happy Hump Day, everyone. Yep, April 3rd. All the jokes are out of the way, I hope. I hope people have all the jokes out of the way. I like to think that they do. Had to readjust the camera here for a moment. And as always, I try to start my programs. I have my beliefs. You're going to like this, I think. I pledge of allegiance to the Constitution of the United States of America and to the republic for which a flag stands, one nation under Almighty God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yes, I've changed a few of the words around there. I had to do it. It just makes better sense. You don't pledge of allegiance or your allegiance to a flag. You, in this case here, to your government. And our government is our Constitution. Maybe this is a couple decades off. Maybe this should have been reconsidered in my beliefs. And that's me being truthful. Speaking of which, always I have a quote. I was given this today. Truths sound like hate to those who hate truth. Truth sounds like hate to those who hate truth. Todd Wagner. Well, let me give you a little background on Todd Wagner. He's an American entrepreneur, a co-founder of a broadcast company, and the founder and co-founder of a company called Charity Network, which organizes regular fundraisings. He's a philanthropist. He's a good man. He does things for people. And his organization does to those who are, of course, obviously less fortunate. But you know what really caught my attention about this was my good friend Heath. He was kind enough to give me this quote. He knows I like my quotes. And the sad part about it is we are living in a day now. We are living in a day now where it doesn't really matter. We're lying to ourselves. Society is lying to itself. Why do I say this? I'm going to make the statement, the skies are blue with white clouds. How many of you would generally say that you see in the skies that they are blue with white clouds? Well, believe it or not, oh my goodness, I'm actually allowed to be blessed for a moment. The fact of the matter is the sky is blue. It has white clouds. Occasionally we have a little rain or whatever, but the bottom line is I'm telling you the truth. Now, if I turn around and say to you, well, the sky is green and the clouds are purple, you would know it's a lie because you could see it. So I asked at the last moment. I knew I was hoping that this would happen. I have a friend of mine that I've been working with for well over a year and a half, and I'm very proud to say he's a friend. In my opinion, he's a brother. I would do nearly anything for him. And he's going to join me on this. So, Heath, I'm going to bring you up right now. This is completely, well, at least I'm going to try to bring you up. Why am I... Here we go. Let me go this way. I don't know. I'm trying to bring you up right now, Heath. There we go. There we go.
Good evening, Mr. Cooper.
Good evening, Mr. Gilbert. I've had a very bad struggle. I'm going to tell you, this is the truth. I've had a very bad struggle sleeping, kind of agitated. I didn't even want to do a show tonight. About 15 minutes ago, I said, that's it. I'm going to do a show anyway. And I based it upon what you offered me here through Todd Wagner, which is truth sound like hate to those who hate truth.
Oh, I'm glad you found the original author of that quote. It was a young man that I heard say it, and I attributed it to him. I like that quote a lot.
Yes. And, you know, I'm going to make a statement here. And I didn't advertise this program out. I have to tell you, I didn't care to. I'm kind of lost in limbo with myself in life. And you know what I speak in regards to that. And I know this wasn't something that was something I asked for. But, we try to tell the truth. And I'm going to go with, and I'm going to say, I want to dedicate this program to a disgraced editor of the Cameron Citizens Observer. I call him the Potts, Jimmy Potts. And he had it in his ability to print truth. And he obviously did not, because people were misled by his, I'm going to say, biased personal opinions.
Yeah, yes, without question. Without question.
So last week I had the opportunity. I wanted to kind of discuss this. I don't know if you know the individual that was with me at a court case. Can we talk about that?
Yeah. Are you talking about the 28th, perhaps?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. We can.
Well, this is what I, truths and lies. Society accepts them both. Why?
Because it's convenient and because they hear it often enough. If it reinforces their belief, they're willing to believe something that they should otherwise know to be false. If it furthers the narrative and the things that they believe in, they're willing to accept it.
So last week, you and I knew that Jimmy Potts had a court date for 4 infractions tickets.
I think
We
it was
saw
more
his
than 4. I
bicycle.
think it was 6. He was arrested twice for driving without a license, driving without a registration, and no proof of insurance. So it would have been 6. He got arrested twice for those 3 things.
Okay, so he's doubled down on them. But at one point, we had walked in and we saw his bicycle, and we both knew he couldn't have drove his bike 35 miles.
Yes. Yeah.
He's not in the physical condition to do so, even though it is, I think you said it was electric or gas powered or something.
Yeah, it looks like he modified it, added the electric. There's a battery pack on it, and there's an electric motor that runs the chain. So it's it's not really a moped, but it's kind of like a moped. You can pedal it, or you can use the electricity to power it.
And with the knowledge about that, is it possible he could have actually driven it or not?
I don't know what the range is on them, and I suppose it is possible, but I'd spent a period of my life where I was a young man not making a lot of money. I used to ride a bike to work, and it was just 5 miles to get to work. And I was younger and probably in better physical condition than Jimmy. And even then, when I would ride those 5 miles, you could tell of course, I had to have a helmet back then, but my hair looked like it had been in a helmet, and my face was flushed because riding a bicycle, especially on something that's not level ground, which we don't have here, it requires a little exertion. He wasn't flushed in the face. He didn't look like he had been sweating. His clothes looked like they had just been ironed and were in good shape. And he didn't look like he had been riding a bike, not a bike for 35 miles.
That would be the distance, by the way, from his home in Cameron to Plattsburgh. Okay. So we're just laying this out for you folks. We saw his bicycle chained to the lamp, and we both entered the court because we were so interested in hearing what was going to go on. But we were informed earlier that day, 150 people she had, cases that she was going to talk to.
Right.
Hey, Godfather, what's going on? Heath, that's a shout out to you. So it was going to take a minute, but at the same time, there was a point in the courtroom where you turned to me, and it was like I was thinking about it, and we connected.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm going out the door to go look for his car. And
Yeah.
you said, right on. So I may have missed something in the courtroom. It would have been horrible if I did, but I did search, and I found the car. And I notified the police. I took pictures of it, notified the police. I felt it was parked too close to a stop sign. I knew it was partially on private property. And I talked to this officer. In fact, I'm just going to call him the old man because I did look at the video for his name, but that
That's what
wasn't.
he called himself. Yes.
Yes, he's the old man of the police department. So I did speak with him briefly and said, hey, the car's illegally parked. I think it should be towed. He's in the courtroom right now. And I gave him all that lowdown. And then I went into the courtroom and I had to talk to the clerk to ask for a recess, technically, to talk to the judge and let her know what I had found. The address where the intersection where the car was parked. The car was there, license plate number, pictures, whole 9 yards. And then she came back into the courtroom and proceeded with the other people until she got to him, at which point in time I had been told to stand up when she called out his name, so she could possibly consider allowing me to address the courtroom. And I would say he's kind of I don't want to say a slug, but he's not a very brisk walker for the better part. But when he was called up to the stand, he just kind of moseyed on up there. But when she said bye to him, that he may go, I would say he was like a bolt of lightning, wouldn't you?
He was in a hurry for some reason. Yeah, he was.
So she did ask me and allow me to speak. And I told her that he had, in fact, it is suspect to me, that he had brought his bicycle in his car, drove and parked it 6 blocks away, and drove his bicycle to the courthouse as if he drove all the way from Cameron. And so I let her know the whereabouts of whole 9 yards, and we left. And she took some notes. We were under the impression, by the way, so was she. I had said that I was hoping that the police may, in fact, tow the car. They didn't.
Hey, Vincent, may I ask something real quick?
Sure.
Wasn't here at the beginning of the show. Did you explain why he was in court and the circumstances under which he should not be driving?
No, not in full, not at all.
May I?
Yes, please.
Okay. So this fellow who likes to use the paper, he was a former editor, likes to use the paper to push an agenda. He likes to refer to himself as a pillar of the community, and he has a lengthy, colorful criminal history, and he was apparently ineligible in the state of Missouri to get a driver's license because he has unsettled matters in another state that's in the compact with the state of Missouri. And if you don't have your driving infraction settled in that state, you are ineligible in the state of Missouri, where he resided until apparently today, to get a driver's license. So in December, he got caught driving a vehicle. He did not have insurance for the vehicle. The vehicle, I believe the registration had expired about 4 years prior. So the vehicle hadn't been registered in 4 years, and he didn't have a driver's license. They arrested him on that day for those charges because he's a repeat offender. He keeps doing these things. So he posted bail, he got out, and he was given a court date for March 28th, I think was the date we were there. Less than a month later, or about a month later, he got arrested a second time while he is still waiting for his original court date for driving while suspended, not having a license, no registration, no proof of insurance. He got arrested a second time. So on March 28th, the date that he has court for being in trouble for being arrested twice, no license, no registration, no proof of insurance, he gets in that same car that is still not registered. It still is not insured. He still doesn't have a driver's license, and he drives himself to court to answer for the 2 times that he has been arrested for the very thing that he was doing that day.
You know, the thing that I wanted to lead up to this, and I think that you've got, I believe you may have my back on this, because we hadn't even really discussed it in any further detail other than that few moments that I drove you back to your vehicle. But at one point, the police officers did in fact show up, and the one officer made it sound as if I was harassing him.
He was trying to make that case, yes. He was trying to get you to incriminate yourself. He didn't ask why you believed that the vehicle didn't have a current registration, why you thought that he was driving without a license. He didn't ask any of those things. He went immediately to, are you harassing this man?
So,
No, what did he ask? Is this
you
a
have a
vendetta?
A vendetta.
Right. Is this a vendetta?
Yeah.
He didn't do anything about that. You made a criminal complaint. You called the police to make a report. I believe that this is a violation of law. I believe it's illegally parked because I believe it's on private property. I believe it's parked too close to the stop sign. Doesn't have registration, doesn't have current plates, doesn't have insurance, and the guy driving it doesn't have a driver's license. He didn't ask any of those questions. He wanted to hook you up, not the man that the pillar of the community. Perhaps it's because you're not a pillar of the community. He wanted a piece of you because you're not a pillar of the community like Mr. Jimmy Potts.
And really, Heath, and I think you would be in agreement with me of knowing why I said this to the police officer, which is it's a public service announcement. It's a public service awareness. And I even made this statement to that officer. If he is on the road, goes through a stop sign, and God forbid hits a car that your wife is operating with your children in it and kills someone, how are you going to feel about that?
Yeah.
And he never even answered.
No, he was the editor of the paper, and he was at a school board meeting. I think it was December 16th. So he had been arrested, had posted a bond, was out, and I saw him at the board meeting, and I asked him about it. I said, Jimmy, did you get that little incident taken care of? And are you going to be driving soon? He said, oh, I'll be driving tomorrow. And when he indicated to me that he had it taken care of, I thought he'd been to court. I thought he had a driver's license again. He didn't. But he admitted that I will be driving my car tomorrow.
And
so
how many
blatant disregard and respect for the law. And you're absolutely right. He doesn't have insurance. That's why my liability or my uninsured motorist vehicle insurance is so high, because of people like that.
And that's reflective of everything, even, and I don't want to get too far off the topic, but when you go to the convenience store and say, wow, it's $3 at the convenience store in the suburbs, it's $3, it's $5 at the convenience store in certain areas of town, that's because the criminals steal so much, they've got to offset their prices. And again, this is offsetting our prices for our car, automobile insurance. This is what criminals do to our society.
And you know, I've made mistakes in my life before. I know that I have allowed insurance to lapse on my vehicle, but it wasn't deliberate. The choices that he is making, he is choosing deliberately to drive without insurance, to drive without a license, and to not register the vehicle. I don't know what has caused him to not be able to get a license. I don't know the answer to that. But he knows he can't get a license. He knows that he can't register the vehicle. He knows that he cannot get insurance. And he's doing it anyway. Absolute blatant disregard for anybody except for himself.
Well, you know, the thing is, it's people that make up and who live their lifestyles like this. In this case here, he's lying to not only us, he's lied to the courts. I don't know what the judge is going to do to him in the long run. I would like to think of the expression, throw the book at him. What is the book and how much weight does that have anymore? Right. Especially when you've got a law enforcement agent that really wanted a chunk of me. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm giving you a guy. Why do you want me?
Right. And honestly, the judge, it blew my mind that you were not on the docket. You had nothing to do with what was going on there, but you had seen that Jimmy had drove to his court case. And when the judge found out about it, she wanted it. I can't speak for the judge. She didn't say this, but it appeared to me that she wanted you to have the opportunity to stand up and to be able to tell her in an official capacity that this pillar of the community had driven to court while coming to court for all of those things and still hadn't had any of it resolved. She wanted to be able to have the opportunity to enter it into the public record that the man that is arrested twice in 4 months for driving and breaking the law did that very thing on that very day. And I think that she even asked about, is the car going to get towed? It sounded like she felt that that would be appropriate. And she asked, did you call the police, correct?
Yes.
Right. So,
and they should have towed it. I mean, the car had no registrations proper. That in and of itself gives law enforcement a reason to tow a car.
I can't speak to their city, but the city of Cameron that I spend the majority of my time in, if your vehicle isn't registered, even if it's parked in your own driveway, they can ticket you for it. If it's out on the street and the registration is expired, they can tow it.
So I wonder, was Jimmy possibly such a pillar of the community that this cop knew him so well and thought so highly of him, henceforth with me trying to do a good deed, and by the way, let no good deed go unpunished, the cop was trying to handcuff me, is what I'm saying, and berate me or charge me, whatever. Is that a possibility? I wonder why they didn't go for and I just say it like this, easy money. To me,
I honestly felt that could it be possible? Yes. I suspect it's something more along the lines of you were interrupting his coffee break, or he had something else that was going on and he was just irritated. He felt that it was, I don't know, not that it's not important, but of all the things to call the police for, he's wanting, I don't know, Vincent. I've never met the man before. I honestly don't even remember his name. I just remember his behavior and his attitude. And the moment that somebody else was on scene, when that sheriff showed up, his attitude switched 180 degrees, and he went from being belligerent and trying to accuse us of wrongdoing to, okay, we're going to look into the car now.
Yeah.
The moment that deputy pulled up, his demeanor completely changed.
Yeah. And he actually then did call the plates in.
Yes. Yes. He asked the question, if this guy says, why did you run my plates? What am I going to tell him? He's going to tell him the truth. Somebody who is from Cameron that knows you have been arrested 2 different times, that you don't have registration, you don't have proof of insurance, you don't have a driver's license, that it appears that you drove to court. And when he tells me that you don't have a current registration on the vehicle, I see that it is a Texas tag. I know as a law enforcement agent that you have to have an inspection sticker in the window that indicates when the inspection was done, and to let me know whether or not the plates are current. And because it's within plain view, the plain view doctrine allows me to run the license plate to see if it is indeed valid, or whether it is, as you had indicated, an expired plate.
Why? I mean, right there, he can see the truth. He's got it on record, the cop. And yet they accepted it, and they let him, supposedly, I guess, I'm assuming, he managed to get back to the car several hours, because I stayed there for a good 3-4 hours. I had some phone calls to make, some things to do. I'm not from there, but, I just want to see whether I was going to see that car rolling. But they accepted it. The cop, I think the cop, I wonder if I'm right now, you gave me the idea. I'm thinking about calling the judge up and saying, guess what, by the way, we could have had the car towed, but the cop let him drive it away and pack it on the back of a U-Haul truck within less than 1 week. And he has now moved into another state with the car in tow.
Vincent, I don't know that it would be fair to say that he let him drive the car away. If he had for example, a 911 call, somebody was choking or a medical emergency,
sure,
and he had to leave. And I believe that Jimmy was watching for the police to leave so that he could get to the car, because he knew that they were looking for him, because they know that after you told them that he's driving illegally. So he probably waited until the deputy needed to do a shift change or had another call, and he left. Jimmy got in the car and drove home. And we don't even really know that he drove home. He may have had somebody else come and get the vehicle. I
Yep.
didn't see him drive. You didn't see him drive. We're making the assumption that he drove there. It's logical that he drove to court because there was nobody else with him. And when he left, he headed exactly in the direction where the car is parked. But no, it's not fair to say that he let him drive.
Well, I guess the thing that I'm getting at is he still had, I felt, some cards to play that could have put Jimmy in kind of a little bit more uncomfortable water, i.e., again, having it towed, just an inconvenience. But we are living in a society, and the truth of this matter, and I'm going to say this to you, by the way, thank you, Heath, for everything you have done to help the Cameron community in exposing the rights of the parents and the children that have been taken away, and indirectly, and these are my words, the abuse of the children in the school at the policies that are not being enforced properly, i.e., let's just give bullying and the dress code in the school some little latitude for which to play with here. But they're abusing our children, and they're allowing again the upper, and I say this, to me, cut off the head of the snake, you can, the rest of it will die, obviously. And that being Matt Robinson signing the checks for pornography. We found, and there was a group of people that worked around you and worked with you, found all these ugly books in the school. And yet we're supposed to accept some child who has an issue of sexual identity. And we have to start calling that child by a different name, they, them, so on and so forth. How do you feel about it? Or is it, because I myself, I've got my, I can let loose. I call a spade a spade.
Well, fortunately, I don't think that we have that policy yet in the Cameron School District. I'm sure that there is a possibility that there are teachers that will do that will call a boy a she, or honor their requested pronoun usage, but we don't have a policy in place that mandates it yet. Cameron is behind the curve in some of the other larger schools in our state. I'm not aware of a policy, but it's entirely possible that individuals do that. And I guess if the parent says, I want you to call Susie Tom, and the parents tell the teacher, please call my child Tom, that the teacher has the choice of whether or not to do that. I think it's wrong and immoral for the teacher to do it without the parents being notified or made aware of the problem. And that is the trend that we're seeing on both coasts.
Well, I find having to call a child by their pronoun is encouraging this madness and form of child abuse, i.e.
Right.
mental abuse, is still child abuse in my book. The
Right.
Don spoken. And that's precisely what I see. A man in a dress. He's just a man in a dress. I'm not going to open the door. I'm not going to pull out his chair. I don't have to touch his coat to remove it. I don't have to call him lady or use a feminine word, and I won't, because I wouldn't be truthful to myself knowing that a bearded man wearing a dress is wanting me to call them miss.
Yeah.
I can't do it. Why has our society dumbed down? And I'm going to give you another person's name, a very good friend of ours, both of ours, Dan Landy, have been to school board meetings for 18 months now, plus, close to it. Almost 2 years.
Been going for about a year.
Yes. Dan's been going since for about a year, since January. of last year, and you're just over by another 6-7 months. And yet we had a lot of problems. It seemed like with election signs, you or Dan Landy's crew, I call you guys the dragon slayers, or us guys the dragon slayers of evil dragons, by the way. About the signs being too big, they shouldn't be on residential properties, blah, blah, blah. And they were all down crawling into everyone's business. And yet other people were doing things, and the ethics committee or the person in charge in the town wasn't as, let's say,
Diligent.
yes, diligent in following out, and as hard pressed to say, take care of this now.
Right.
You've got people in the community that literally, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around it. Ryan Murphy ran for office.
For school board, correct.
For school board. I think the little I know of him, sounds like a good guy, no doubt.
Yes.
Definitely a good guy. Father, teaches, I think coaches basketball or wrestling. He's active in the community. And yet you've got a man like Dan Landy who has assisted you in exposing and in the investigation of facts against the school board. Not that you guys are trying to look and pick for fights. You guys are just bringing out what's the obvious, saying it's going downhill. And yet Dan, who also ran and has much more notoriety within the community, this young man, Ryan Murphy, actually beat him.
By a large margin. Yeah, he sure did.
Never heard the man's name until literally a month ago.
Right. And
is it really just a popularity contest?
Oh, without a question. It is, in this little town, it is absolutely a popularity contest. Dan also ran for school board, for those that don't know. He was one of 6 people that ran. And Dan made videos talking about the problems that he sees in the district, ideas on how to resolve those problems. He talked about the bullying that's going on in our schools. The bullying is horrible. It's out of control. He talked about that and ideas on addressing it and trying to get it under control. He talked about the GPA, the grade level proficiency. Only 40% of the kids in the Cameron School District out of 1,600 kids. So only 40% of them are grade level proficient in reading. And this is a new stat for you. This is going to blow your mind. In the 2015 school year, the grade level proficiency for the Cameron School District in reading, take a wild guess at what it was.
I'm going to hope to say it was like 85%?
70%.
70%.
Yes.
So in less than 10 years, it was 70%. And 10 years later, it's almost cut in half.
Yeah, it's dropped 30%.
And this would be Matt Robinson, superintendent, who actually received a raise.
Yes, he sure did. Yeah.
So the worse you are at your occupation, i.e., in this case, for example, a school superintendent, you get more money.
That whole thing, honestly, we could talk for an hour just on that. Yes. Yeah. But the point that I was trying to make is that Dan was stating positions and things that he believes needs to be addressed in the school district. The book issue that I've talked with you before here is just one of those topics. He had a number of topics that are of concern, and he has ideas on how to change them. He shared that with the community, and he was absolutely pilloried for being mean. He says things that are mean. And Mr. Murphy, again, by all accounts, he's an amazing man. He volunteers for the community. He's very active in his church. He volunteers at his church. He works for a local company. He has been in the community for a long time. Truly, he sounds like a wonderful man. But he did not share a single concern about what's going on within the Cameron School District. He didn't have anything that he stated that he wanted to be addressed. Dan did. And the community knows that they're a problem, like the drugs. There's a real drug issue in the high school. We know that it's a problem. The parents and the teachers know that the bullying is a major problem in our school. Dan says, I want to address these things. And the guy that takes no stance, that doesn't take a position on anything, gets almost 4 times the amount of votes. It's a popularity contest. It was easy for everybody to like him because he didn't say anything bad about the Sacred School District. Even if it's true, Dan did not say anything that's not true.
Correct. Dan exposed truths, and they didn't want to hear it. The community didn't want to hear it.
Right.
And you just now blew. Yes, you're absolutely correct. You just now blew my mind. I was hopeful, thinking it might have been like 80 or 85%, but still, to just be at only a 70% level is kind of amazing to me, because out here you would think that the students had better opportunities, better family values. You don't have the and I'm going to say it like this, the craziness of the inner city. And let's face it, you can't even walk around the corner in Kansas City to change your mind. There's someone there. You're just packed. Whereas out here, you've got a more wholesome lifestyle. So I'm kind of surprised that it was actually only 70%.
Yeah.
9 years ago.
By the way, I think if my numbers are correct, I did this a couple of weeks ago. If there are 1,600 kids in the Cameron School District, 40% of them that are grade level proficient means that 960 of those 1,600 students are not capable of reading at grade level.
Isn't that unbelievable?
Right.
I mean, almost 1,000 of those kids cannot read at their grade level whatsoever.
Yes.
So
and he's pilloried by the community for daring to say such truth. I don't understand it.
No. And the other thing that I don't understand is that the community would actually turn around and support Jackie Peck, who was one of the other 6 candidates, who's been on the school board now for 8 years, who has never really even addressed. I don't think I've heard much out of her ever. I mean, literally. She might have not even 3.5 minutes of conversation in the 18 months that I've been involved total. She's never really been, and she's never given us her position on the books, for instance. So if I'm not mistaken, you and Dan tried feverishly to get the community involved, to having a discussion about what's going on at the school. And you made those invites to all of the candidates. None of them showed up.
Yes, we didn't host. We attended a meet and greet, if that's what you're talking about, where we went to the American Legion and extended an invite to all of the candidates so that they can come in. There was a moderator. I've been on his show, Mr. Richie King's show, before. He doesn't live in our community. He can't vote in the community, and he volunteered his time to moderate that event. He had a list of questions I didn't have beforehand. He didn't give to Dan beforehand, that he asked right there on the spot, and allowed members of the community to come as well. Those other 4 members, they didn't come. One of them even went so far as to say, well, Mrs. Peck, to say that she would have nothing to do with anything that candidate Dan Landy and write-in candidate Heath Gilbert are involved in. She flat refused just because we were going to be there.
So here, you 2 gentlemen are willing to expose yourselves completely to the community. The turnout was dismal. It was, I mean, we had people that showed up, but it wasn't quite like I know what I would have hoped for. The Cameron community has what, 12,000 people in it, correct?
Oh, I don't think it's even close to that. I think it's closer to 8.
Oh, okay. Then
and that counts the prison population, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're counted on the census.
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah. Well, I guess it was very it's sad that the community is not getting involved. And 10, 15, 20 years from now, when we're closer, I should be dead by then, I would think. You'll be not far on my heels, young man. Hopefully in a better world. I'm going to a better place. I'm sure. I'm trying for that anyway. We're going to be our society is just declining. It's declining. It's getting worse. And I don't know how to say it any other way, but if it's bad like this right now, can you only imagine what it's going to be like literally in another 100 years?
If it continues this way, I don't know that we'll make it another 100 years. There has to be a change. What is it? We're borrowing $1 trillion every 100 days. We cannot continue this way. We won't be around in 100 years if we don't see change. We're not going to make it. Well, at least, and not still be the United States of America that you and I know.
Well, let me say this about the quote that we had that I opened up with. Truth sound like hate to those who hate the truth. Why is the fact that people are really hating the truth? Why?
Vincent, I don't understand it. Truly, I don't understand it. And I have seen a lot of it, unfortunately, over the last couple of months. I ran as a write-in candidate. They announced that they were going to do a debate, and I thought, hey, here's an excellent opportunity for me to get in on the discussion and try to further move the goalpost here on what we're doing within the district. So I ran as a write-in candidate. And after announcing that I was a write-in candidate, I have seen a lot of that hate. I've been accused of hatred. One of the things that I was accused of hatred that absolutely blows my mind is a woman stood up and read a position paper from the Parent Teachers Association. And I mentioned the woman's name, which is not a secret because it was done at a public meeting, and she was required to state her name before she could speak to the Board of Education, and that she read the position paper of the PTA. And I showed the document that she read from, and I highlighted a portion of it that talked about, what was it? Human sexuality, gender identity, and sexual health. The PTA supports books for the curriculum and in the library that include those topics. And I use that as an example to say, here is an example of how and why we have these types of books in our schools, because the organizations that have ties to the schools support this type of content being in our schools. It's the position paper. Forgive me for stammering. I still don't understand how me pointing out that the woman read this document, it's not her statement, it's the statement, the position paper of the PTA. Somehow me pointing that out equates to me being hateful. I don't understand it. I can't wrap my brain around it. I didn't even say that this woman, I don't know, Vincent. I don't know.
Well, I have to tell you, my heart's broken for Dan. It really is. I really had hoped personally that Dan would have gotten in there. I was pretty sure Peck would. And that was the thing also, the class and the respectful class of character that you and Dan have. Neither of you tried to cast any negative characteristics on the other people who are running for office.
Right.
Neither of you put them down, spoke ill of them, spoke bad of them. And yet, I think maybe we're doing this wrong. Because Jackie Peck was quite adamant about her disdain her disgust, and her lack of respect for both you and Dan.
Right.
And here she's sitting on a school board, and that technically is a role model for our community, is a woman who has hatred in her heart, in short.
She would say the same thing about Dan and I, by the way, that she doesn't like the shirt that I wore, the signs that I held up, or the sign that Dan said. And she would make the argument that we are supposed to be an example for the kids, and that we would be providing a bad example, and therefore we shouldn't be a board member.
And clarify, the words that were on those shirts were words that were actually, and you can tell the rest of the story.
All right. Yeah, I had a T-shirt on that I bought just for the school board meeting. And this was around the time that we were finding these books. And there were, I think it was 4 different books. And between the 4 books, it had the F word used more than 300 times. So I bought a T-shirt that had that particular word in bold in it, and I wore it to the board meeting. My point being, they were offended by my shirt. They did not like my shirt. The adults that were reading my shirt thought that my shirt was offensive. And that was the point that I'm trying to make. If you are offended by an adult reading this word, as an adult reading the word, you're offended. Why do we have books that have that word in it 100 times or more each? What is the literary value of that book? What is the curriculum objective of that book? That I bought that T-shirt for that board meeting. I don't wear that T-shirt in town, but the community is in an uproar that I would wear such a shirt, that I would wear that shirt in front of a bunch of adults. There was no kids in there. I had a cover shirt on until the point that I got up to address the board. I took my cover shirt off, so the board is the only people that can see my shirt, but they were offended. And the signs that I held up, I took words, quotes out of a book, The Color Purple, and they were very disgusting. But I had asked the Board of Education twice to add that book to the list of books that are being reviewed. They're reviewing the books to see if they need to be restricted or not. The board had twice refused to add that book to the list of books that would be reviewed. They refused. So I took the words from that book and I printed them on the back of the card that I was reading from. So the board is reading the profane language on the back of my cards. One of the board members was so upset. They were visibly upset at the language that I had on the back of the cards, that she took a picture of my sign. And at the end of it, I said, by the way, the words on the back of these cards are from that book, The Color Purple, that you refuse to add to the list of books to be reviewed. That is a book that they're placing in the hands of children. The adults in the room were visibly shaken by the description, the partial sentences that were on the back of those cards. They didn't want to read it, but they refused to adopt or change any policy to protect the children that are under their, not supervision, under their care maybe, that they are responsible for, to prohibit the kids from reading that same content. And the community is mad at me because I use dirty words. They're not mad about the books that have those dirty words that are being given to the kids. They're mad about an adult that is using his First Amendment to convey my disdain, my, what is the constitutional right word? The 5 parts of the First Amendment starts with an R, and I can't come up with it. To voice my concern about their lack of any action. I can't come up with it. I'm embarrassed. Forgive me.
No.
To do anything about the books. It is my constitutional right to go redress. It is my right to redress a grievance that I have against that public body. They are all elected officials. It is my right to stand there and redress a grievance of them not doing anything about the language in the books. They are not protecting the kids. And instead of being upset with the Board of Education and the school district that put those words in the hands of the kids and don't do anything to protect them, they're mad at the messenger who is pointing out the very exact language that is in the book that they ignore.
I wanted to say it's a vicious cycle, but it's not a vicious cycle. It's just a way of thinking here. It's literally their way of thinking.
And they call me mean for doing that, Vincent. I'm picking on the Board of Education. I'm picking on the school district. I'm looking for reasons to be mad. Well, I guess I kind of am, because I'm going in and I'm finding the books that have that type of language. So I am looking for reasons to be mad, but it's not because it's not just. It's because they refuse to look for the books that have that type of language. They refuse.
Right.
And if they're not going to do it, somebody has to. So we are.
Well, one of their reasonings for, I believe, one of their reasonings, and I'm pretty spot on, I think. They say, well, they can look the books up, or they can look the books up on their telephone, or they can get into a computer, blah, 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 blah. And I understand all that. Recently, just as within the past, I'd say almost month, Ron DeSantis with the state legislature of Florida, they've turned around and placed caps and told parents, you know what? You're going to be responsible for the content that's on the kids' telephones and on their computers. In other words, leaving it up to the parents to have that full reign. It's sad that government has to get that far into your life, that common sense doesn't play a factor. That's my opinion. Yeah. Because uncles will share it with their nephews. I mean, not that I ever had an uncle that shared pornography, the centerfold of Playboy with me. Wish I did when I was growing up, of course. It was like, gold. But that was then, it's like, I don't know. I just don't think that it should be in the hands of these kids. And now states are beginning to even go one step further. I just heard on the news that some parents are going to be held accountable for their 10, 11, 12-year-olds that are running the streets, that are carjacking.
Oh my gosh.
They're the walls are, the pendulum, as they say, is swinging, is really beginning to swing to the other side, I believe. I just don't know if it's too late. I don't know if it's too late, Heath.
I don't understand what's going on in our society, Vincent. It's a decline, and I don't like seeing it.
Well, I was on the phone with my with a ex-girlfriend 35 years ago. Tammy and I still speak. And she's like, well, Vincent, what can you do about it? They're not learning anything in school. And I think one of the biggest topics of learning that's important is what's called history. And it seems like every 300 to 400 years, when you've got like the Greece, you had the Romans, empires, there's always that big change of it's the demise of the society. It's a dumbing down of society. Gosh, I wish I had figured out a way of saving Jason Whitlock, but it's true. People nowadays, rappers can't write normal sentences. They use phrases like cap the pig, and technically cap the pig is street lingo. We know what that means, but it's degenerating the words. It's not making the words. It's not making the best out of our academia, of our society and communities across the board. In other words, people aren't learning to read. They're not like you just said, 40% of our kids, and yet they're more interested in sports. Explain to me if you had the opportunity to have been on the school board, how that would have had a different approach.
Okay. One of the concerns that we have in the Cameron School District is we do not believe that the education is being made the priority. And our statistic that we shared that 40% of the kids, or not only 40% of the kids, can read at grade level. The sports teams, any extracurricular activity, not just the sports, so art club and band, drama club, whatever. When I was in school, I had to maintain a C average in anything across the board. And if I had an F, I was automatically placed on the bench. You can't play. You can go, but you can't dress out to whatever that event is. I had to maintain a C average. The current standard for the state of Missouri, that is set by the governing body for the athletics for all public school, in Cameron, they have 7 periods in high school each day. A child can have 6 of those grades be a D minus. 1 grade can be an F, and they still qualify to participate in that extracurricular activity. There is no GPA requirement at all. And that brings up the question that Dan and I had, is what is the priority here? Is it the experience, or is it truly the education that is the benefit, or not the benefit, the priority? It appears in our district that all of the fun things that they have to do, like they built a performing arts center, so an amphitheater, essentially. They spent over $8 million to build it. Yes, it's nice. It's a beautiful building, but not every kid is going to go in and use the Performing Arts Center. Not everybody's going to be in, I don't even know what classes that they use it for, Vincent. I don't know. We have children that are below, when they started building that, the kids were below a 50% proficiency rate about the time that they voted to build that Performing Arts Center. Less than half of the kids were grade level proficient in science, reading, and mathematics. And instead of finding money to raise those proficiency rates, they raised $8 million to build a Performing Arts Center. What is their priority here? If education was truly the priority, any money that they could raise would go into increasing those grade level proficiencies, to increase the testing. In Missouri, they call it MAP, the MAP test. Why are we spending money on things we really don't need when less than half of the kids can read? I don't understand.
Well, I remember growing up, sports were a big part of my life. I will say that. And I believe I'm like 10 years older than you. And living out on the East Coast, by the way, in a big city, Philadelphia, a totally different, I think, upbringing all in all. And I'm just throwing that at you, a little attitude on that. But living in the inner city, sports was real big. We knew that was our ticket out. Other words, we might become a boxer, or we might become a tennis player, what have you, and that a football player, hockey player, and that was our out to the big time. But it really became so pressing to the point within the past 15, I'm going to say 20 to 30 years, that it's almost been more of the goal. No longer was the goal to get a good grade point average, go to college, get a study, get an occupation of some sort of professionalism under your belt, and then go into the real world to work. It's gotten to the point of nothing but play sports.
Yeah. The mission statement that they read at each of our Board of Education meetings, they say the words, and I'm paraphrasing, this may not be it exactly, to provide the best educational experience possible. What is an educational experience? That is being able to use the Performing Arts Center if you want to. And I don't disagree that it should be a good experience for them, but we don't send the kids to school. We don't spend millions of dollars a year of public money to run a school district to provide an experience. We spend all of that money, or should spend all of that money, to provide an education. And I don't think that we're doing that. And that's not just here. I think that that's going on across our nation. They're getting, well, you see stories where they're building $1 million stadium for their football team. I'm concerned about the education in the United States, and Missouri's not the only one that has subpar numbers when it comes to grade level proficiencies. What is our priority here? Is it the education or is it the sports?
And I just had, there's a guy over here for a moment. I thought this guy might be pulling our chain. He actually has the 16th Amendment, is what it led me to this, the 16th Amendment about the education. It's quite an interesting piece. So I got lost there for a moment. It's actually a trailer of horror, I believe, or child abuse. But anyway, I'm lost.
The 16th Amendment is on education.
What's that?
The 16th Amendment is education?
No, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something different here. I'm going to share the screen for a moment and see if I can find, this would be it right here. I'm going to share, I'm going to throw this in here just because this guy, made it happen, I think.
16th Volt Freak. I have no idea what that is. Are you talking the blocking guy?
Yeah. He has.
I have no idea what it is.
Congress the power to establish and collect federal income taxes. It says, the Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived, without apportionment among the several states, and without regard to any census or enumeration. Prior to the 16th Amendment, which was ratified on February 3rd, 1913, the Supreme Court had held in Pollock v. Farmers Loan and Trust Company, 1895, that income tax was a direct tax. Article 1 of the Constitution requires that direct taxes be divided among the states according to population, or apportioned, regardless of how much that particular state had contributed to the tax itself. The 16th Amendment released the government from this apportionment requirement for income taxes. The 16th Amendment resulted in a big change in how the national government was funded. Prior to the amendment, the source of most of the national government's income was through taxes on goods and services. Today, individual federal income taxes make up slightly more than 50% of the national government's total income. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
So, this guy had me on this 16th Volt Freak or whatever it was. I saw the 16th Amendment, and yes, you're correct. It wasn't about the education, but when I saw that ship, and I'm thinking, wow, with that ship that hit the bay, we're screwed. That whole area of Baltimore screwed for the next, I don't know, how many years is it going to take to build that bridge?
Oh, I don't even know.
Clean the wreckage alone is going to take probably close to, I'd say 6 months anyway, to a year, I would think. I may be wrong. But just like that ship that hit that, we're sinking. Our country is sinking. And with that money that they were actually talking about, the income tax there, we should allow parents. We should give tax money back to parents who want to privatize school, charter school, homeschool. Because public school is not doing it.
Because all of the unions, education is a massive moneymaker for so many different people. Just in the state of Missouri, I believe they spend more than $1 billion a year for education just here. It's a massive industry. There's so much money to be made, and they don't want to lose the monopoly of the private education or the public education system, because if you put it in private hands, you force them to compete, they're not going to be able to unionize, or have the teachers unions are going to lose their money because, excuse me, in a private school, they're not going to unionize the teachers. In a parochial school, they're not going to unionize the teachers. I really think it's just the union influence that is holding on to this so desperately. All of the state level standardized testing. Most states have their own standardized testing that they do at the end of the year to evaluate where the kids stand. That's a moneymaker. It's huge. It's a massive moneymaker for these companies that offer those services. I really think that is why there's such a pushback to protect the public school system. And there's no better way to fix the problem than to allow true capitalism to take part, force the public school to compete with the private sector by allowing the money to follow the child. That would fix the education system, or it would put the public school out of business. And
Well,
if,
yeah, I had said that myself. If I was to be governor of Missouri, I kid you not, I would get rid of the NEA, the AFT. I'd get rid of them. I'd get the heck out of the states. This state, we don't need you. What we need are people who do care about, and there are teachers that care about the education of these children. No doubt in my mind.
they're
They're not all teachers are bad.
there's some amazing teachers in the Cameron School District.
Yes. Yeah, there are. And their hearts are in the right places, but they're slowly being, and I'm just going to say it like this, it's almost like I feel like they're slowly being brainwashed and conditioned. They're so used to, no, you can't think like that. You got to think like this. Okay, fine. And then they say, well, that fits into our program better.
They don't teach the kids how to think. They teach them what to think.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the teacher. Well, it is the teachers that teaches it, but it is the state and the federal requirements for the curriculum that include these things in here. And who is it? Oh, doggone it. The oil tycoon out of New York, Rockefellers. I think it was the Rockefellers that said, when they talked about the public education system, they want people to be educated to be workers. They don't want them to be independent thinkers. They want people that'll come to work for them and make them money. And that is the education system that we see today. They don't teach these kids to be entrepreneurs. They don't teach these kids to think critically. They put a book in front of them. They do rote memorization of facts, dates that are important. They can't explain to you why those things are important. They just know the dates. It's a sad state, Vincent. I dislike it.
You know, I'm sitting for a moment. There were a couple things you made me think about, and they went real quick. The unions, unionization of America during the Industrial Revolution, the late 1800s into the 1900s. That was socialism. That was a touch of socialism. Oh, we're here for you people. You know, we're the Democratic Party. We're here for the local union people. And people got so, I want to say they just got so used. Okay, we go to work from Tuesday to Saturday, 6 in the morning to 6 at night, blah, blah, blah. The detachment of the lack of family interaction, the meals, the socializing. And you and I actually experienced that for a moment at the Passion Church, going through the 33 program. And so this is where we're at today, because maybe I was a problem child all my life to begin with, Heath, because I always independently thought, well, if I do it this way, you know, I could get something done, do it quicker or whatever, get my buck and get out of the yard faster. But they don't want these kids to think. And I watched a piece earlier. I don't know when it was done. Joe Rogan was interviewing Elon Musk. Elon Musk, by the way, is fairly much a big non-supporter of AI.
That's an understatement, Vincent. The Mars program to establish a settlement on Mars is because he believes that AI is going to kill every human on the earth.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for making that point. It is an understatement, because he absolutely thinks that we should have taken that much slower. And really, when you get down to it, how many other things could we have taken a little bit slower? If society around the world, and I'm saying instead of this climate, hey, let's do a climate organization of climate change. No, why don't we step back, take all the phones away, go back to landlines? Why don't we look at the computer and say, you know what? It's only on. There was a time when, and I think you remember this. There was a time that TV shut down from like 12 o'clock at night till 6 o'clock in the morning.
Nothing was on. Yes,
Yeah,
everything. Nothing was on.
nothing. And they've conditioned us, and now it's just literally we've turned into a grind. That's what we are. We're like a grind. And I think that grind has really made people very selfish across the board. Not everyone, but a bulk of society, very overprotective, very selfish, very self-centered. We worry about, really very few things outside of our world. And you look at like with Trump just now using the new phrase, which of course I've been saying this anyway, the border bloodbath.
Oh,
This,
yeah.
I mean, people don't realize we've got a little community that we have our eyes on, you and I. We don't even have the time to think about what's happening in Texas. And I'll just leave it there. But we've got this change in our society that's going to hit us so quick from the amounts of people that have come here from other countries. God only knows what for. Some of these people have already started murdering young women, men, stealing cars, robbing. Our judicial system is broken down so bad. We're hoping for a shark's bite teeth. I myself am anyway. Out of this judge in Plattsburgh on Jimmy the Potts. I would love for her to have the shark's bite. I don't know if she will. And then you look at a cop for a moment that I'm making a public service announcement to protect people. And he said, oh, this is personal. It doesn't matter if it's personal.
He's
Do
more
your job.
upset with you than the man that's breaking the law.
Yes, do your job.
How dare you report somebody that is willfully and deliberately a multiple time offender of that particular law? He had no interest in it. He was more upset that you called and reported it.
So right there, it falls in the lines with the truths and the lies. Why do you want to take a good person and say, hey, I'm going to throw a charge on you for harassment, or however he was going to try to twist that, and not take care of the business at hand? In this case, making sure that car did not drive away too easily. A little obstruction. We're living in some, I say this, Heath, I don't want us to give up on any of this. Myself, and I don't. I think we need to dig in deeper. Because Dan didn't get in there, I have a feeling there's and you said there's another election coming around in what, another year or two?
There's a school board election annually.
Every year.
Yes.
Okay, and then you get to sit on it for 2 years once you're elected.
3. There's 7 members, and each term is 3 years. So they have 2 members elected 1 year, 2 members elected the next year, and on the 3rd year they have 3 that are elected. So 2, 2, and 3. So every year at least 2 people are coming up.
Gotcha. And this coming year is going to be 2 people again.
Correct. Mrs. Early and Mrs. Lockridge will be up.
Well, I will say, I don't think this, I don't like using this word on this subject matter, but I've got to. I don't think you're challenging. Thank you. I needed a moment, Heath. I think that by you and Dan making the challenges that you have made and exposing these challenges to the community, I think it's just going to take maybe another year of something happening before they finally get it through their heads. Because something else you had mentioned to me was, I believe, like not even 20% of the people voted.
20% of the correct. less than 20% of the registered voters, which not everybody is registered, but among the registered voters for the county, less than 20% of them showed up yesterday to vote.
That's another truth, correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's coming right from the county clerk.
Isn't that disgraceful? I mean,
It's wildly disappointing. And
I take it just a little bit further, just say it's disgrace. It's just
that
absolutely
20% number is almost double from the year prior. So Dan and I raised enough concern that nearly another additional 10% showed up to vote yesterday as compared to the year before.
Parents have got to realize in this community that the wool has been pulled over their eyes, and not everything they're hearing and seeing is necessarily true.
Oh, Vincent, the dirty stuff that went on, it's dirty.
They didn't even at the election booth poll, for instance, the county clerk is in charge of that, correct?
Yes.
The election. So they didn't even have anything on the table as people were coming in to say, hey, I'm John Smith. I want to vote. I live at 1313 Mockingbird Lane. There was nothing there that even said, oh, by the way, we have a write-in candidate, and you have to fill in the oval, write the name Heath Gilbert if you want to vote for him. There wasn't even any mention of that whatsoever. No. In any of the polling booths.
All right. No, it's not required by law, so they don't do it. They only do what is required of them.
Well, that's something that's going to have to be looked at, and they're going to have to change that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how often the write-in candidate makes it, but it would make sense.
Well, I'd like to know who all the candidates are. I just moved into town 3 weeks ago, and I'm a person that votes, and by golly, I want to put in whoever has an R after their name, whoever has a D after their name, I want to vote for them. Oh, wait a minute. There's a write-in candidate? I didn't even know about that guy. It's little things like that, and I'm going to say irk me. Something else that irked me, and tell me if I'm wrong, please. In Kidder at the voting poll for the Cameron School District school board elections, in Kidder, the retired minister of faith, Dan Kirscher, was actually one of the judges. And he's on his way out of the school board after sitting on it for, I don't know how long he's been on there.
6 or 8 years, I think.
What's that?
6 or 8 years, I believe.
He's been on there long enough to know. Personally, I just don't think that was a proper place for him to be as a judge for that particular type of election. If it was a state election, I'd say yes. State representative election going on, yeah. If it was county commissioners, I'd say yeah. But that's a little close to home.
Yeah, you could possibly make the argument that it's a conflict of interest, particularly because he has been vocal against Dan and I. And Dan and I are both on the ballot. And it wasn't just the school board. There were other matters that were on that ballot too. But yeah, I don't know any of the election laws. I don't know. I'm assuming that it is legitimate that he can do it, but yeah, I don't know.
Well, I will be getting a letter together shortly in the next couple of days. As always, before I send anything out, try to have several friends of mine review them, you being one. So I'm going to definitely be writing a letter to the county clerk as well as to the Secretary of State, because I think situations as such, being a conflict of interest, 100%. And like you said, in the case of him in particular, his there you go. I hate to be redundant, but his disdain and hatred for Dan and yourself, no hiding it. He doesn't have a poker face.
Yeah, no, I
So
don't.
therefore, do I think he should have been in that room being one of the judges for it? No, no, not at all. We need to make changes. I don't know if there are changes are going to happen. I don't know if we're too late. History being what it is, repeating itself, we know it to be true. We're on a bad decline. And all I know is it breaks my heart that you and Dan didn't have that opportunity getting on a school board. I'm hoping next year, maybe something this year will happen that will make people stand back and say, you know what? Yeah, our kids were losers by not having those two men in office.
Yeah.
Or one of the two men. Because someone else made a comment about that too. Dan Landy says kids are losers. Well, yeah, he was referencing that the kids are losing out on a true pulse of a heart that really wants to do right for them.
Yes, I agree. Because the current Board of Education, there only going to be one new member on that Board of Education, and the new member doesn't have any issues in the Cameron School District. Dan is saying that the bullying that's going on, that is occurring with the students, is out of control. It needs to stop. That there is a low teacher retention rate. A 3-year retention rate is only like 65% for the Cameron School District. They have teacher positions that have gone unfulfilled for an extended period of time because they can't get qualified teachers that want to come into the district. And I don't think that's just a district problem. I believe that's a state problem. And he even identified that he believes the part of the issue is the discipline or the lack of discipline that is in the classroom. The teachers are overwhelmed with the discipline issues within the classroom. There was a study, the Reed Lyon, it's a Herzog Foundation online paper that they do. Somebody did a study recently, and on average, in an hour, each hour of education within the public school, only 17 minutes of that is going towards the education. The rest of it is a distraction and behavioral issues that the teacher is having to contend with.
And I think really, I think we've been talking about, I know I've talked about this with other people, and I think we touched on it too, about how it's more of the feelings of the social, of the emotional.
Social emotional learning is something that they're starting to play with in the state of Missouri, and they are not implementing it into the curriculum yet, but the teachers and the administrators know about it, and they implement it in when they're talking to the kids. So
Yep.
the kids need to understand why and how they feel the way that they do. They spend time explaining and reasoning out their emotions with them. And I'm not saying it's not important, but that's something that needs to be done at home. That's taking away from an education, and we are already failing in educating our kids. They can't read, they can't do mathematics, and they aren't doing well in science. Every time they add something new to the day, it takes time away from the core, the basics that the kids just aren't getting.
And really, with what you just said, Heath, it's coming down to, and what I mentioned earlier about how now different cities, different states are beginning to look at things a little bit differently with the kids in particular, kids that are running the streets at 10, 11, 12 years old. And now they're kind of saying, you know what, we're going to blame the parents.
They should be blaming the parents if their children are running the street in the middle of the night. That's not. And don't get me wrong, I am fighting with the Cameron School District, but a lot of the behavior issues that are going on within the school that the teachers are having to deal with is because of the parents aren't parenting their children. It's not the fault of the teachers that the kids are misbehaving. It's not the fault of the teachers that they're constantly having to discipline these kids to redirect them for inappropriate actions and words. It's not the teacher's fault. I have no qualm with the vast majority of the teachers. My concern is I don't believe that the administrators are backing their staff and enforcing the policy on the kids. So the behavioral issues they ignore because it is more important to the school district that child is sitting in the classroom and in the seat so that they get paid for that child being there for the day. If that kid is gets out of school suspension or is suspended from school, they lose out on that money. And the money is more important to the district than ensuring that everybody gets an education. And if you've got a kid in the classroom that is a discipline problem and is constantly interrupting the class, nobody's getting an education. Not just the kid that doesn't want to be there. Nobody gets an education.
You've made me kind of think a little bit more here. And I'm just going to toss this to you. I'm a teacher. I've got 30 kids in the classroom. Trying to keep that one boy from being a bully, trying to help that other little girl build up her self-esteem because they all say she's ugly and they beat up the bully guy. I want to get my hands on his neck and shake him and say, hey, it's always someone bigger than you.
Mhm.
So really the teachers are actually stepping up almost as parents indirectly, and many of them are parents anyway.
Social workers, yes, they wear many, many hats. And I understand that many of them are happy to do it, but that is not why they're there. They're there to educate. For each new hat they need to wear in that classroom, it takes away from their ability to teach the kids. They have social workers in our schools now that go in and sit down with the kids to talk about how they're feeling and the way that things are going in their life. Why is that the responsibility of the school district?
That's that's just it. It shouldn't be.
Right. Sorry.
And well, the thing is, you drop your kid off, say at 8 o'clock in the morning, you pick them up at say 4 o'clock. I don't know what the hours are, but 4 o'clock. So you go to work, hopefully you get to pick them up and you go home, you try to have somewhat of a normal life, dinner, or whatever. But I think it's just coming right back down to family.
It is.
And with what we're experiencing right now, in certain ways, I look at certain cultures that have crossed the border illegally. They are criminals. They're here wrongfully. And yet I do, and I'm thinking about the South Americans and the Mexicans, Mexican people in particular. I know their faith in God is strong for the better part across the board. Of the many families that I've met, they're all very God's number one, families number two, and they're hardworking people across the board. But that's where families are coming together, and yet we have so many that have come across that are not family geared oriented at all. Single men, very fit, able to literally create chaos everywhere they go.
Military age men.
Military age men, very nice. Thank you. Good way of putting it. And here we have our society that's already fractured and broken. Foundations are cracked left and right of families. I believe it's going to get worse. I believe even if Trump gets put in there, for instance, if Trump gets to be placed into office again, I hope he does. He's going to be a stern man. I don't think he's going to be pulling any punches. But that's what we're going to need. We need those strong leaders. You and Dan would have been a very good, strong leader. Not that you were opposing them, but that you were enlightening the community. And sadly enough, the community decided to just put blinders on.
Yeah.
And that's on them. So I thank you for everything you've been doing, by the way. Everything you guys have done. Both of you, Heath. Part of me wished I maybe even, because I did. I reached out to you minutes into the show. In fact, I think I was already a minute or two into the show.
Right. I had no idea I was coming on or what you wanted to talk about. I'm like, oh, here we go. This might be interesting.
Well, we've got a lot of good actors in Cameron that aren't getting recognized. We've got a lot of good people in Cameron. And we have a few bad people in Cameron that we have got to, well, I didn't think it was going to be quite I didn't think Jimmy Potts was going to be quite. I didn't see this one. I will say that. And I'm not supposed to gloat, but believe me, there's no love loss here. I'm not going to say there is. I can't lie to you, and I'm not going to lie to anyone. I'm very
I
glad.
believe that man is partly responsible for the opinion that the community has of us. He wrote horrible things that were not true about us. He would not allow anybody to submit an opinion letter that said anything that was decent about us. It was attack after attack. He didn't cover any of these fights that we have with the school district fairly. He would interview the school board member or the superintendent after a meeting on an issue about the books, and we'd be standing in the hallway and he wouldn't even ask us for a comment. He was uninterested in our side. He only wanted to push one side.
And I think that had a lot to do with this horrible election, personally.
I think that it played a part. Absolutely it did.
Yeah.
Because that's all that was in the paper. Heath is a bad man. Dan is mean, and they hate the school. That is, if you read the paper and you didn't know either one of us after the months and months that went on, that would be my opinion too, because that's all that was in there. They didn't give us a fair shake. When I settled my lawsuit with the school district for a violation of my civil rights, I sent a copy of the settlement agreement to the paper and said, I would be happy to make myself available if you have any questions about this. They didn't print the lawsuit when I filed a federal lawsuit against the school district, and they did not print that there was a settlement agreement that was reached. And he said in one of his articles that he doesn't want to give me any opportunity to be heard in the community because he doesn't agree with what I did.
And how many tax dollars did you receive, Heath? I mean, you raped. Didn't you rape Cameron?
Well, with everything in there, I didn't get a single penny.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've heard on the internet, Cameron Community Forum and Unfiltered, all. I'm sorry, you didn't get any money?
No, I didn't get a penny.
And yet everyone runs around saying you made money.
Yes, and that it was a frivolous lawsuit. You have found yourself fairly recently needing to have an attorney to represent you. Let me tell you how my experience went with my attorneys. They received the documentation that I have of everything that it occurred. They listened to because I recorded it. So I had proof of what happened that day. And my recording completely disproved the narrative of the school district. They said, Mr. Gilbert, we are going to fund this entirely. You do not need to give us a retainer. You do not need to pay for the filing fee for the federal lawsuit. You do not need to pay for the school district to be served. You do not need to refund me the money for the hotel and the mileage for me to get there to be able to file this. We are going to take all of this on because we are so confident at the end of this that we are going to reach a settlement that's in your favor, that we're not going to charge you a single penny for the services we're going to provide. Would an attorney do that if there was any chance that that lawsuit was frivolous?
Zero.
Right.
Zero.
Right.
There's not one. I don't care how stupid an attorney is. And believe me, prosecuting attorney here in Davies County, she's very light. She's very light. It amazes me that she's a prosecuting attorney. But seriously, there's not an attorney in this world that's just going to say, hey, guess what? I'm going to take this all on.
Right. And it wasn't pro bono.
No.
Because they were, well, I guess it kind of was kind of pro bono. They wasn't charging me for their service, but they were so confident that they would receive a positive settlement in my favor that they didn't charge me a penny. I did not have to give them a single cent for the months and months worth of work that they did to represent me. How anybody can say that that is a frivolous lawsuit is entirely beyond me.
And that's because
they're dishonest.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing. When you have media, and right now I've said media, there's 5 branches of government, not 3. Media being number 4 or 5, bureaucracy being number 4 or 5, but it doesn't matter. Right now, media. When you've got media that won't even allow, for instance, that censors people's thoughts, opinions, editorials that they want to put in.
Yeah.
I believe Dan Landy had several that he would not, in fact, allow him any print or of press on.
Right. Dan would write a rebuttal to the attack pieces that Jimmy would write or other people would submit as an opinion piece, and he wouldn't allow it to go into the paper. He flat refused. Anybody that had anything positive to say about Heath or Dan, they refused to print it. But if you want to denigrate Dan or I, oh, we're going to hook you up, brother. You're going to be in the paper this week. Yeah.
Yep, it's where they're not letting us really know the truth. And that's a misjustice to the children in this case. I mean, that's what this is about, the truth and the lies.
Right.
This is a misjustice to the children. It is a loss for the children. Not that the children themselves are losers, but they definitely are not any better because of what has happened.
Right.
They're not any better. To have a rubber stamper in Jackie Peck and a go along, get along, I'm positive that's what Ryan's going to be. I don't care about how good a person he is, so on and so forth. I just don't see him having the open mind for us to say, hey, Dan, I want to sit down and have lunch with you. Let's talk about the school board. That would be because he initially blocked, what's this? Was this blockage of positive coverage at the whim of Mr. Putz?
Yes, he's the editor, or was the editor of the paper. It was at his sole discretion.
Yeah. And oh, here you go. Ruth just wrote this. They do it everywhere here on Facebook, and look at Trump hiding the truth. And they are right now. They're actually gag ordering. I don't know if you know this, Heath. The family members of all the attorneys. Can you imagine that? How
is that not a violation of their First Amendment right?
That's nationally, and this is locally. We can't do anything in D.C. You and I can't. Like to think we could, but right now we don't have that power, clout, what have you.
I agree.
But we've got to deal with our community. And I just say personally, sir, full steam ahead, full bore. Let's not stop. We know we've got them way on the ropes bouncing, and they are on the ropes bouncing. They're caught up. There's no way that they could get away from this in the long run. It's just persistence and patience, I believe, are going to be the two P's of this situation. You know, they're going to get caught. Something's going to happen that's going to be big enough that the town, I believe, Cameron, is going to say, you know what, we're done with this. There is something to look at here.
You know, I'm not convinced of that, Vincent. Do you know any Dallas Cowboy fans?
Yeah, my brother.
Okay. And if you asked him who the best football team in the nation is, what's he going to tell you?
Okay, you
The
catch
Dallas
me with
Cowboys.
Yeah, Dallas Cowboys, right?
When's the last time the Cowboys won a Super Bowl?
I don't know.
They have an emotional tie to these things that they love. And I think that the sports analogy applies to our school district. These people have an emotional tie to the Cameron School District, and they are unwilling to admit that their team hasn't won a Super Bowl in a long time. If you're going to be the best team, you've got to win some Super Bowls. And if they've not won a Super Bowl, you can't honestly argue that the Cowboys are the best team in the nation. They can't be if they're not winning a Super Bowl.
Okay.
And because Dan and I are saying the school needs to change, we're attacking their school idol here. They have an emotional reaction to us saying we have a bullying problem. Well, my team doesn't have a problem. My team is perfect. We have a low grade level proficiency rate in our school district. Well, not my school district. My school district's the best one in the state. They can't back it with anything. They just have that emotional response to somebody denigrating their favorite team. I think that is what we're seeing.
You know, that's kind of That was very clever of you, Heath. I like that about you. I think that's one of the things I really like about you. Quite clever. Because by you giving that little situation, little attitude, please. I have a son who's 14 that thinks he's gay. I love my son. He can't do any wrong. But guess what? I'm gonna play along with his game. I'm gonna go along with his lie, with his deception. I'm gonna promote it, push it, endorse this because I love him so very much. What's going on, Kimberly? I love him so much. But if I were to do that, that would be wrong of me to abuse my son and to support that rather than say, son, we need to go get some help. Let's look into this a little more.
Right.
And so many parents are just willing to say, oh, I think it's kind of cute that my daughter's gay or my son's gay. I mean, it's like a social norm.
Yes.
And I think a lot of that also, though, is the fact that there are no morals. Morals have been brought down throughout our communities.
Yes.
The values of again, respect, love, caring, concern, of the real, truthful things that are going on. Just that simple, Heath, is there anything you'd like to say? Because we're going to wind this down another 10 minutes or so.
Oh, we've talked about many different things. And I don't know that we mentioned that Jimmy Potts has left us. He left the state today. So we have lost the pillar of our community, Mr. Jimmy Potts. He has no control with the paper anymore. It's going to be a devastating loss for our little community.
Yeah, I know. I know I'll be, well, we have a replacement. Jamie Honeycutt of the
Clinton County leader.
Thank you. Thank you. I was just ready to look over for the newspaper. Clinton County leader. We do have a possibility of another press man coming in that wants to, I guess, step in to fill out and help out the Cameron Citizens Observer in having that Clinton County leader come in newspaper. I'm just going to hope that this individual will be a little bit more middle of the road.
Yes.
Try just the middle of the road.
I've read his articles the last couple of weeks, and it is a significant improvement over what I've seen in the paper before that. He's fair. He provides both sides, and it should, it gives me the opportunity to think and consider not just my own opinion, but the opinion of the other side. And that is what I believe that journalism is supposed to be. So I have high hopes for it. He's off to a good start.
I agree with you. I've have two of the papers here. One I believe you gave me, and I'm just hopeful. I really am, because we definitely have to keep an eye on our media in our town. The radio station, I don't even listen to it. No. The local radio station, I won't, because they don't care about the city. They don't care about the town. They don't care about what's concerning or should be concerning to, for instance, you and Dan, that you, Dan, have, Paula, and many other people have, and they don't want to let anyone in on what's going on. And I think that that's wrong. But that's how they run their operation. Music and cut up jokes in the morning with the Good Morning Show or whatever it is, Breakfast Club, whatever they got going on. And I look at it like this. To me, that radio station is to Chris Ward, the director down there that I've dealt with. He's a real piece of work. Is to Jimmy Potts what the Cameron Observer was, which was basically a hobby. I think these people look at their positions more of a hobby to, again, go along to get along. We're going to play the newest country song or the newest rock song. Oh, we're not going to print this logical, common sense piece of article, but we'll print the BS, and we're good with the BS. That
Right.
would be Jimmy. And so really it does come down to, I think, information of who you're going to pay attention to. I'm going to plaster this, by the way, on my pages because I plastered everywhere else but Heath. Because I think Cameron needs to have that right to know what's going on.
Vincent, we really need to have some honest discussions about the issues that are going on in our school district, and the Board of Education refuses to do it during a public meeting. They won't have an honest discussion about the issues. The only thing that you will hear when you go to a board meeting is how amazing the school district is. Every vote that they take, all 7 of them vote exactly the same way. There is never a discussion. Are we sure that we want to do that? And if you got a couple of minutes, I can give you a perfect example.
Please.
At the last meeting, at the last minute, they added a contract that they wanted to vote on. And first off, it's in violation of the Missouri Sunshine Law. You can only add an item at a minimum of 24 hours in advance of the meeting so that we, the people, have the opportunity to review those documents and see what is in them. The contract wasn't big. It was a 3-page contract. And the board didn't discuss it openly in the meeting at all. They started that portion of the meeting by saying, okay, anybody from the public have a comment. So they invited us to come up to the podium to speak about this contract, and we've not heard the board discuss anything about the contract. They had a gentleman that was there that night to explain the contract and answer questions for the Board of Education. They forced us to speak about the contract before any discussion was held about the contract. And we would have to guess at what they were going to talk about. So I pointed out the fact that they are in violation of the Sunshine Law because they added it the day of the meeting, and that I felt it is wrong that they ask us to speak to an item before they tell us anything about it. During the discussion for that meeting, one of the board members asked the question, well, what are our options for renewal of this contract after the 5-year, $23,000 contract is up? Had she read the contract, in it stated that they can mutually agree to extend that contract for up to 2 additional 5-year terms. So the board member did not read the contract before the meeting. She had not read that contract. Had she read that contract, she wouldn't have had to ask the representative from the law firm what their options were to renew. During the discussion, again, this is after the public comment period for the community. After that has ended, my only opportunity to point out that there's inconsistencies or a concern with it, one of the board members asks the superintendent if there are any other companies in the state of Missouri that offers a similar service. He didn't even know. So I believe that the superintendent and the Board of Education have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers to spend our money wisely. They asked one company to quote them a price to provide this service to the school district. They didn't even look to see if there were any other companies out there that provide that service. Perhaps it could have been a better service for less money. We don't know, because they agreed that night to sign that contract. They also said during that discussion that they have 2 months in which to decide to sign that contract for it to be able to be rolled out for this school year, this upcoming school year, like they want to do. So there was no rush. And even after the board learned that there is another company, because the man that was there to represent his company, they asked that man, are there any other companies in Missouri that offer that service? He named one of his competitors for him. And even with the name of that company, they didn't say, you know what, we need to hold off on this contract until we can talk to that company. And because I was forced to talk about that contract before the discussion was held, I can't point out, wait a minute, it doesn't appear that you read the contract. Why are you going to take a vote on signing it or not if you haven't read it? There's another company out there that offers a similar service. Why are we going to sign this contract tonight if we haven't checked to see what that other service is and what the cost is? Before the meeting started, I asked the school board president, have you gone through any of the sample documents of what we're going to be buying with that $23,000 to see what you're getting with that contract? And she looked at me like I was crazy and said, no, Mr. Gilbert, we're only here tonight to discuss the contract. We haven't looked at any of those policies. So they don't even know what they're really getting for that 5-year commitment in a $23,000 price tag. And part of that contract, it requires the school district to retain this law firm as their legal counsel for any school district related issue. If they sever their contract or they sever the services, the legal services with this law firm, that contract, that 5-year, $23,000 contract immediately becomes null and void. The school district is required to retain this law firm as legal counsel as part of this contract to provide policies to the school district.
That's unbelievable.
Right. And they made these decisions without any input from the community and without even allowing us to hear the discussion before they give us an opportunity to address them. They don't want our input. They don't want to hear what we have to say.
What we have to say.
Right. And that is the third meeting where I have gone before them and stated, this is immoral that you require me to speak to you about these items before I know anything about what you're going to vote on. I can't speak to the item because I can't read your mind. And they still continue to do it.
Wow. Yes, you and I had talked about that. I just don't understand why parents are so willing to just say, hey, blindly, here's my kid. I'll pick him up in 12 years.
Because if you listen to the school board meetings and you listen to the Board of Education, we are the absolute best school district in the entire state. Everything is amazing. There are no problems. Everything is wonderful.
Well, you did say that they open up with awards and gifts and all kinds of salutations amongst themselves.
They do.
And to me, it's just a joke. It's like the Oscars this month will be the Oscars. Coming up next month will be the Emmys. The one after that will be the Global. They all get certificates. They all get Dragon dollars or something. And it's just, to me, it's just horrible. It's just flipping horrible what they're doing. You know,
a $30 million amphitheater.
And
I'm assuming, Kimberly, that was a public school. That doesn't surprise me. This little school got an $8.7 million amphitheater, while less than half of the kids are grade level proficient in reading, math, and science. We spent $8.7 million just on a performing arts center that maybe a quarter of the students will ever really use. Where are our priorities? It's not in education. It's in the experience while they're there. It's sad.
Well,
and I'm a mean man for saying it.
Heath, you are a mean man. And I am too, you know.
Oh, you're meaner than I am. You use more naughty words than I do. I only put them on my shirt and my posters.
Yeah, and no truer words were mentioned in the past hour and a half to 2 hours of this podcast, except for that statement right there. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, you gave me that quote, and I didn't want to really talk about the news around that's going on, except what the news is in my life going on here. Because again, I think getting a little bit more direct to the point of what's going on here in Karen, in hopes of making a good positive change, is more important to me right now, because I can't do anything else anywhere else around the country. I can't do a damn thing, and neither can you. But we can try to make the changes that we know are right, or to be in the right direction, challenge situations as they come into our laps and either realize that we can be part of the answers and the solutions, or we can be like these knuckleheads, as you like to use that phrase. By the way, thank you. Be part of the problem, which a lot of knuckleheads are, obviously.
Yeah.
Again, for them, someone to say, "Oh, that was a frivolous lawsuit." It doesn't go federal if it's frivolous.
Not very often. And you
And
certainly don't
especially
have
with
the attorney say, we're going to do this at absolutely no cost because we're so confident at the end of this, we're going to get a settlement that's going to be in your favor. Mr. Gilbert, we're going to cover all of your attorney costs.
And really, you really truly could have, Heath, you could have said, "Hey, I want X amount of dollars on top of it." And that's where the big stink would have come in at. You know what I mean?
But that's not why I was doing it, Vincent. I was doing it to protect the rights of the people that follow behind me so that they don't have to go through the same nonsense.
And you know what, Kimberly? I think I'm going to put this up here from you. Thank you. She says that she prays she says, "I pray I have awakened a few on the journey." And I think that that's what you and I are about, Heath, is waking people up on this path that we're walking on. Not that you have to agree with us, but you can definitely say, you know what, there's something fishy in Denmark.
Yeah. Well, look at how many people you've seen that have come in and sit down and heard and looked at the documents that I've got, and they've changed their mind and agreed that there's a problem in the district. People are, not as many as I would like, but people are waking up to what's really going on.
Well, I'll tell you what, I wouldn't mind, and I mean it too, Heath. Anytime an hour or two with you on here with me is always well worth it. Never a disappointment. And we've seen some pretty big changes as of lately, like I said, or like we both mentioned or talked about. It takes a little while. It took about 4 months to bring the pillar of the community down. The putz will no longer be around to negatively influence the community.
Yeah. And he took himself down. We didn't have to do anything. He did all the work himself.
Yeah. True. But the thing is, it's what goes around comes around. There was a higher power to make all this happen, and it was about time that he got stopped. That's all. He needed to be stopped. And if this was the way that it had to go down, then so be it. I hope he continues to drive. I hope he doesn't hurt anyone. I'll leave it at that. Yeah, I hope he doesn't hurt anyone,
Right.
But I just know, Heath, that Cameron took a big loss 2 days ago. And the children are the losers. Sad. Because they missed out on not only Dan Landy, but yourself as well.
Well, we're not done yet.
Oh, I know we're not. I know you're not. And I want to thank you for taking this time. I hope you got a good bit of it off your chest that you wanted to.
Yeah, I did. And hopefully next time, give me a little advance notice and let me know what we're going to discuss. I came in here completely unprepared. So,
booyah. That's just called sheer honesty and truth. And that's fact, folks. I started the show and then asked him to come on. So thank you, Heath, for taking this time. And I mean that. And I'll definitely, hopefully, have that opportunity to bring you back. Let's get this shared on our Facebook pages somehow, some way. And let Cameron know there's always next year.
Oh, we're not going anywhere. We're not going to go away and lick our wounds. We're going to get back up. We're going to learn from what happened, and we're going to come back stronger. And we are going to continue to make needed and positive change in the Cameron School District.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so very much. I'm going to let you go now, Heath. Have a good night.
Yep, you too.
Folks, seriously, I didn't even want to do a show today. I just wanted to crawl underneath the shell. I wanted to go into that cave. I wanted to get up in my bed, go under the blankets. So much it can almost wear you down. It can almost break you. It can almost break you if you let it. And that's the whole thing. You can't let it. But Heath had given me that beautiful quote, and I've got to say, it's been sitting with me, and I can't even seem to, for some dumb reason, believe it or not, I'm having a hard time remembering it. I can usually remembering it, but truths sound like hate to those who hate the truth. And so you look at a man like Donald Trump, and you don't like his in-your-face, off-his-hip answers, his self-assurance, his confidence, whatever it may be. But you know what? You're hating his character, but don't hate his truth. And likewise, when you've got people in your community or for neighbors, in this case here, I'm very blessed with having Heath in my life as a friend and a neighbor. He's only about maybe 15 miles away, I think. 20, actually 24, 25, something like that. But seriously, you know, when you've got it going on, that's the glimmer of hope, is the truthfulness, the openness, the honesty, the enlightenment, or shedding the light on. And we've got to do that. We've got to challenge. I'm going to hope that this individual will do the best he can. And I don't know, getting involved now. I don't know. I don't think there's any cliff notes, but we'll see just the changing of the guard, as they put it. Folks, thank you very much for joining me. Greatly appreciate it. You know, not everything is also glum. We can get things back. Believe it or not, we can correct this ship, but it's up to us to do it. And it's up to us as individuals, be it a man or a woman that's watching this. We all can make that change. We just have to know that we do it for the right reason. And in this case here, with what we feel, it's our education. It needs to be saved. In the meantime, peace out. Voraciously yours. Bye.
A generation duration of my time. There is nothing we can do.